My name is Beau Welling, and I founded a company that's very creatively called Beau Welling Design. And we are golf course designers and land planners, and overall got a great team here based in Greenville, South Carolina.
I mean, the game is an amateur game. I mean, the professional side of it, there are idols and heroes and fun to watch them play. But I mean, if it wasn't for amateur golf, there would be no golf.
On a nice day, it's very scoreable, and you go play it on a 15, 20 mile an hour day, and you're hanging on to your pants. And I think I love that about that style of golf, link style of golf.
You have to remember, when you play a golf course and you're out there for 4 hours or whatever, you're only hitting a ball for 15 minutes of that. So there's a lot of time to look around.
Well, hello, Beau. How are you?
I'm fantastic. How about yourself?
Yeah, great, thank you. But I want to start off with something that's not golf.
Sure.
I don't think I've ever done this before, but I heard that you're incredibly involved in curling.
I am. So I'm certainly long Scottish sports. So I like to say that the other Scottish sport, golf is the other Scottish sport, but the real Scottish sport is actually the Winter Olympic sport of curling. And I happen to be currently the president of World Curling, which is the international federation for the sport, the IOC partner for the delivery of curling at the Olympics. And it's sort of a long, crazy story. I'm from South Carolina, which is, it's going to be 30 some odd degrees today here. There's not a lot of ice in South Carolina. Some would argue there are not that many people that can spell ice, but it really is, to this day, it's very clear to me that golf and curling come out of the same sort of Scottish ether. Like, angles are important in both sports. They are both sports of value-based sports of integrity, honesty. You call your own fouls in both sports. They're extraordinarily camaraderie-based. That's a big part of the sport. Both sports is sort of the fellowship amongst people. They both have your sort of weird Scottish jargon and terminology, and you could argue that both are sort of excuses to have a nip of scotch as well. But I'm a big believer in our golf design practice is really founded on this idea of golf as a driver of community and a driver of people being with people and having these human moments. And curling is exactly the same thing. And that's, I think, what originally drew me to the sport was watching on television. And it was just this weird thing. But I'm a naturally curious person. And so I just wanted to learn more and more and more. And that ultimately led me, after the 2006 Olympics, to go show up at a U.S. Curling National Championship in Bemidji, Minnesota. And I think everybody was so shocked that somebody from South Carolina, one, would come to Bemidji in the middle of the winter to watch curling. But two, when I showed up, I had a rudimentary decent knowledge of curling. And I think that really shocked them. And so I sort of went for the game because I was fascinated in it. But I left realizing that the real beauty of curling was the people. And I think that's sort of driven me to continue or get involved in curling. I ended up serving on the board of USA Curling for over a decade, and I've been on the board of the World Curling since 2018, and I was just elected in 2022 to this current role that I have. And so I'm headed today. This is how crazy my life is. I'm headed today to go fly to Dallas to go work on a new project we're doing south of Dallas called Freestone. I've actually got the Freestone logo on right here.
Great logo.
Yeah, new 18-hole golf course just south of Dallas on the United States' largest privately owned lake. But then I fly back tomorrow and go to the University of South Carolina football game, which is like a disease. If you want to know what that's like, go find a Bible and read the book of Job, because your faith will be tested time and time again. But then on Monday, I fly up to Montreal, and we've got the World Curling Congress starting next week for a week where all of our members from around the world will descend upon Montreal for a whole series of meetings and workshops, and again, really good camaraderie amongst people.
I know curling a wee bit, just obviously through osmosis of Scotland being good at one thing.
Right.
And I actually went to school with Hamming McMillan and Grant
great.
Hardy.
Oh, awesome.
We're both the year below me at school, which was quite
very
cool.
good. Very good.
Very good guys.
Yeah, wonderful. And great curlers too.
Yeah, very much so. And a lot of people don't know the connection between curling and golf. I've got this theory, right, about curling and golf. Both come from the same sport. I think would that be a right? It's golf on ice.
I think so. I mean, like what's interesting to have started a curling club here locally. And we've had people that are like expat Canadians that had grown up curling, but then we've brought all these people who've never done curling before to the ice. And what's been fascinating is if they have a background in golf, they pick up the sport radically faster than someone that doesn't have a background in golf. And I think it's because there is this conceptualness of the both sports, that there's a commonality there. In some ways, I try to describe curling to people that don't know it, is it's almost like team putting, because you have to read the ice. Obviously, it's going to be a curl or a break to the trajectory of the stone. And the difference in curling is that, unlike putting, is that when you've not picked the right line for the pace you've thrown, in curling you have somebody that can help adjust that, whereas in golf you're at the mercy of gravity. But yeah, I do think there's a real sameness or commonality of the two sports.
The other link is obviously Elsa,
Sure.
where Turnberry is named after the first course at Turnberry is named after the island off the Ailsa. What's Ailsa Crag? It's where
Ailsa
all the
Crag.
curling stones come from, right?
Yeah, like historically, yes. But currently, it's probably about 90-95%. But you see it from Turnberry. You see Ailsa Crag from Troon. Anywhere kind of there on the Perthshire coast, you're going to see it. Ayrshire coast, you're going to see it, and it almost looks like a curling stone in a way, like a big sort of shape out there. But Cays of Scotland is the main manufacturer of stones from Ailsa Crag, and we help support them at World Curling with annual harvests of the granite from there. They're taken back to the mainland, and from there the stones are made. So.
It sounds like some sort of, I don't know, a traditional feasting time or something.
Exactly. Ready the cannons, right? So, yeah.
Superb. Well, let's get into golf. As much as I could sit and chat about curling, where did golf start for you? How did you get into golf?
So I guess the short answer is my father. He was a golfer, and he sawed off clubs for me. So there are pictures of me attempting to swing sawed off clubs at age 2. I'm 54 now, so 52 years of trying to master this sport, and certainly that's not going to happen. But I was a very active junior golfer. I was very fortunate to grow up at the local country club here called Greenville Country Club, and we were very fortunate in that we had a short course, a par 3 course. We had a sort of easier 18-hole historic golf course, and then we had a relatively newer 18-hole golf course that was at the time a top 100 golf course in the United States, a place called Chanticleer. And so I really learned the game there. We had a very active junior program led by PGA of America professionals. And the short course was kind of the par 3 course was sort of our domain as juniors. And that's where I really learned the game. And then it was fascinating in that, when I look back, I realized how the nature of this facility or facilities really helped me and others to develop as golfers, because we sort of learned on the par 3 course. We graduated to the sort of historic, very open, sort of easier, more playable golf course, and then we got better there, and then could go to the top 100 golf course. And so it's almost like this ladder system. And so to me, it's no surprise that Greenville Country Club has produced a lot of people that are either really, really good golfers or people like me that aren't really good golfers but are in the golf business. And so, like, full circle, a few years ago when we got the opportunity to be involved in PGA Frisco, I was immediately super excited about the opportunity, because I could see how that facility was like the goal, the vision for the facility was like kind of what I had grown up, where I'd grown up, yet times a million, kind of thing. And so in that there are all these different sort of levels of golfers that have a way to have access there to sort of fit their game, suit their game. So, and then to make it even more full circle, next month we're going to start doing a big renovation of this Chanticleer golf course, which was the one that was the top 100 golf course. So I'm super excited about that. I mean, that's a unique thing. I've never, to have the opportunity to go, in essence, redesign, renovate, enhance, whatever the right verb is, but a golf course where you grew up, where you really learned the game. So it's either going to be the funnest thing I've ever done or singly the stupidest thing I've ever tried to do, in that for the first time ever, I'm really working. The clients, the members are all like people I grew up with and friends and close associates. So no pressure, right? So, but I'm excited.
I know that set up well, because I'm a member at Gullen, where you have the kind of kids course to number 3, 2, 1. So should we go back to where it started for you?
Sure.
did it start? Was your first job in golf course architecture with Tom Fazio?
It was. So I'd grown up a golfer, played competitive junior golf, and actually played golf at the collegiate level at a place called Brown University, which is in Providence, Rhode Island. And so if you're from the South, which I am, and you go north, which where Brown is, to play collegiate golf, that means you're not very good. But if you're from the north and go south, that means you're probably really good. But Brown's sort of a wacky, weird place, and very, very, very different than, say, a UK university, in that there's really no real curriculum. Like, you kind of do whatever you want. But after 2 years, you have to sort of say, this is what I'm going to concentrate my studies in, but you're even encouraged to make up your own course of study. And so, like, I was debating, do I do something around physics or science, or do I do something around on art or something creative? And I wasn't very coherent, but I literally woke up one morning with this epiphany of, like, wait a minute, golf course design, that's sort of engineering and technical, but artistic and creative. And I did play on the NCAA powerhouse Brown Bear golf team. Right across the street was the Rhode Island School of Design, and they had a landscape architecture program, and we as Brown students were allowed to take classes there. And so I started seriously thinking about this idea of pursuing something around golf course design. And Tom Fazio happened to be building a golf course in Greenville, where I live, at the same time. And my father was involved in the development team of this golf course. And so I started calling Tom and asking him, how does one become a golf course designer? And he basically had to answer my phone call because I was like a son of a client. And that ultimately led to me, like, interning for him as a summer job. And I ended up doing that multiple summers kind of throughout college. And after college, I went back to another university business school, and then got into the world of finance when I graduated, but I always stayed in touch with Tom Fazio. And then he ultimately lured me back into his firm in 1997, I guess it was. And so I ended up working for him for a decade, before leaving and starting this firm where I am now.
What did you learn under Tom Fazio and what did he do differently to other golf course architects? He
was my exposure to golf course architecture, really. And so I'm not sure I can speak to, like, what other people do, but Tom was an incredible person to learn, not just the craft of golf course design, or the trade, if you will, but just also sort of the business of golf and golf design. And I would say, like, even like the business of, like, life. So Tom is probably the most forward-thinking person I've ever met. He's extraordinarily long-term focused, and I think he probably had some of the same client orientation that I'm trying to speak to about my grandfather. But he viewed the world, he viewed golf course design through the lens of my client is trying to sell something, so he's trying to sell memberships or real estate or whatever it is, whatever their goals and objectives were. And so he really thought that golf design should further those goals and objectives. So it should be consistent with that. And so I think when people talk about what is Tom Fazio's golf design philosophy, almost certainly we'll hear words like playability or super playable and super aesthetic. And I think all that's true because, like, to him, that was what the majority of people wanted. And that would allow the furtherance of selling memberships or residential or whatever it was. And so I think I learned all of that. But at the same time, I also learned that, what you do is so important in terms of how you're perceived. And so, like, he would be more interested in designing a golf course that met his client's goals and objectives. That would be more important than even getting paid to him, because doing something good allowed then the next, to get more work for the future, and the getting paid, while everybody needs money and these kinds of things, that will catch up. But, like, if you just did something for money and then it was a bad project, then, like, that could be the end of it for you. So he really, I think, helped. I learned from him of this sort of long-term nature of sort of looking at things. I just come from the world of finance and, securities, which is like the most short-term thinking, universe in the world. Like, what are your earnings this month or whatever? So I think that was a huge lesson. And then he's just a really, wonderful person, and is incredibly involved in sort of charitable endeavors and helping youth. And so I think I learned the idea of, like, it's important to do well, but it's also important to give back. And I wouldn't trade my 10 years of working for him, helping him with his business. I wouldn't trade that for anything.
It's he seems to have he commands a lot of respect in America, particularly in America, because of the nature that he dealt with people and did things. So it's a lot of respect. So when you went on your own, what was your first design project?
So, I have a relationship with Tiger Woods, and I think a lot of people thought I left Tom Fazio to go work for Tiger Woods. That was not the case. I really left to start a new kind of firm. Like I'd gotten increasingly aware while working for Mr. Fazio that the projects that I really liked the most, yes, they were great golf courses, but they really did this thing that I sort of referenced earlier. They really were bringing people together, and this whole idea of golf as community. And I got really fascinated and interested in that while working for Tom. And so I really wanted to have when I set out, I wanted a firm that really focused on that, as well as I wanted to be more holistic in terms of thinking and planning. So a traditional golf course architect, greens, tees, bunkers, like the game. And so I was really interested in like what happens around golf, whatever that is. And so we originally set up and staffed up with land planners and even a civil engineer, and really tried to approach things not as a one-stop shop, but we really wanted to help our clients really think through everything. And so that happened to be was seen as positive for when Tiger Woods was starting his golf design company. And so to answer your question, my first engagement was something helping Tiger Woods with a project in Dubai. And ultimately, that led to additional engagements with him, but then the economy blew up. And so like things were kind of weird. And so when things sort of started to come back to some degree with some of our first engagements, like in the 2010, 11, whatever it was, some of them were way more focused on outside of greens, tees, and bunkers than they were greens, tees, and bunkers. But ultimately, greens, tees, and bunkers part of our practice came back as well. But anyway, to answer your first question, my first contractual engagement with the new firm was with TGR Design.
How did you get involved with Tiger?
I had met Greg McLaughlin at the 1997 Masters, which was Tiger's first Masters as a professional. And Greg had just been hired to be the executive director of the Tiger Woods Foundation, and which was not a big thing at the time because he had just turned professional. But in any event, Greg and I connected, became friends, and stayed in touch over the years. And so when the foundation decided to do the Tiger Woods Learning Center, they had reached out to me and they wanted golf to be a part of it, but didn't know what all that meant. And so I, still like Fazio, sort of help lead the efforts, which ultimately become Fazio efforts, to help with the elements there at the Tiger Woods Learning Center, which is in Anaheim, California. And so through that, I got to know Tiger a little bit better, his father Earl. And so when fast forward another 5-6 years, when they started thinking about starting a design company, a design operation, they reached out to me, asking some questions, and it sort of all followed from there.
What's it like working with him and his design philosophy? Does it fit well with yours?
It's great. And I think we've got sort of hit it off from the beginning. And I think it's because we kind of do view golf the similar ways. He when he first approached me, like he had questions like, I think I know how to design a hard golf course, but like I really don't want to do that. I want to design one that's really fun for everybody. And I think he very much from the beginning saw that he's very observant. And so he had seen other professionals getting involved in the design business, and they were really known for hard golf courses, and he didn't want to do that. Like he wanted to be more of a big tent sort of person. And so I have that same orientation. He happens to really, really love links golf, and I do too. My mother's half Irish, and spent time living in Ireland and playing lots of links golf. And so I think you'll hear him when people talk to him about golf design, he'll use words like, we want to use the ground as our friend. And so like the idea of optionality, of shot making, and being able to hit balls on the ground, I think fits his mind as a golfer, but also this idea of, hey, how do we make golf enjoyable for everyone? So you won't see many Tiger Woods golf courses that have bunkers in fronts of greens and stuff like that, because he wants people to feel like that they can access via the ground. And I think that creativity that he shows as a player, I think is probably why he likes links golf so much, is it's just an option laden of how you hit shots. And so I think we sort of bonded about those sort of elements from the get-go.
I have a friend of mine who's a member at Bluejack, which is it's rated as a #1 course in Texas, which I know was a joint venture between you and Tiger. Sorry.
Yeah, so Tiger designed the golf course there, and we assisted in those efforts. But then this part that I'm trying to explain about us, Beau Welling designed the holistic part of us. We actually did all the land planning, all the amenity planning, like everything that happens around the Tiger Woods golf course at Bluejack is our company has been involved in that and remains something we continue to work on. Now, a decade later, in fact, they're opening the clubhouse finally this weekend, and so that'll be a big moment for Bluejack. And they're even contemplating doing another Bluejack branded golf course in another part of Texas. So it's been a great relationship and project for all of us.
He described the golf course as having, I've got it written here, lie of the land greens, which is a really cool way of describing a golf course that you were saying is you want to be able to play it on the ground.
Yep. I mean, I think Bluejack, to me, it's the greens can be tricky and challenging, but there's lots of play space around greens. It's not overly bunkered, but a lot of shortcut play space around greens. And so, there's all kinds of options about, how do you recover a missed shot? I mean, every golf course architect in the world seems to say, I want to challenge the best players, but then make it fun and enjoyable for everybody else. But then so many people go put sand everywhere, like bunkers everywhere. And I think if you look at today's modern game, a good player really plays out of sand fairly well, if not really well. And a part of that is the expectation that you should have a good lie in a bunker, which seems like an oxymoron, but a not so good player can't play out of the sand at all. And so I think what we believe is that we really want to have lots of play space on the ground around greens, and then sort of turn up the volume on greens. And that for us is how you do the statement that everybody makes and make it hard, challenging for good players, but enjoyable for everybody else. And that also seems like an oxymoron. But, my proof point number one is always Augusta National. Augusta National tests best players in the world, best men and now female players in the world once a year. And the scores are not super low. They're not over par, but they're not super low. But yet my mother, my 81-year-old mother, she loves to go to Augusta National to play. And it's not Bobby Jones or Alistair McKenzie or the Masters or any of that. It's that she can go hit her golf ball, find it, hit it again, and hit it again. And when she ultimately gets up to those greens, she might 3 or 4 putt them, just like she would 3 or 4 putt a flat green. But it's super playable for her. She enjoys it because it's playable. It's not daunting. It's not impossible. And so I think there's just a real lesson to be learned in all of that. And so I think you see that kind of concept and work that we've done, and I think you see that same kind of concept and work that Tiger's done.
I've always it's the reoccurring theme that I see that these places like Augusta has, that a lot of parkland courses around me that have good elevation changes, have interesting green sites. The big difference is the fact that they all have rough. And it's like, what, you've got trees. What's the point of having rough in the trees? You've got to negotiate. That's double jeopardy,
Yeah, I totally agree. I mean, I think the wider you get, everybody likes to talk about strategy too. And I think, if you're not wide, there's not a lot of strategy. It's like hit it in the middle and then try to hit it in the middle of the green. But like as soon as you get into width and things are wide, well, now all of a sudden it might mean something to hit it on the right side of the fairway versus the left side of the fairway. And so we're not big proponents of rough. Like you won't see a lot of rough. Second cut at Bluejack. You look at some other stuff that we've done, like PJ Frisco is super wide. And I think that too is what can make golf more interesting for that better player that really cares about score and strategy. But at the same time, like super playable for those like me that, have a hard time finding short grass on narrow fairways. So.
Yeah. What's a fairway? I've never seen one. You mentioned Frisco there. I've heard you talk about it a couple of times before coming on this pod. And it sounds like you worked with Gil Hans there and you kind of ran the project, and it seems to be a real key philosophy within your business.
Yeah, we had a wonderful, great team at PJ Frisco, and sort of multi-stakeholder, ownership. Not ownership, but there were a lot of stakeholders in the effort. And so Gil was hired to do the East course. We were hired to do the West course. We were asked to collaborate on the short course. But then my firm was also asked to be the master planners of the whole thing. And so the whole thing includes 500 room Omni Hotel, PGA of America's headquarters, North Texas PGA sections headquarters, a bunch of golf oriented retail, as well as like clubhouse and sort of normal stuff. And so it's a big project, nearly 600 acres. And so we had to work in our master planning role. We had to work really, really closely with Gil and his team because we had to figure out how the East Golf Course would work, as well as be able to stage these committed major tournaments. And so the requirements of running the tournament are something that's, again, much more than greens, tees, and bunkers. And so there are many, many things that I think are awesome about PJ Frisco, but I think one of the things I didn't expect going into it that we sort of have coming out of it is that our firm and Gil's firm got to be very, very close. And I think that has remained something that's very, very special. We still talk from time to time. They've actually been very helpful to us in terms of sometimes even suggesting us for engagements to clients, but also, they had their own shaping company called Caveman Construction, and they helped us sort of see that, maybe we should have our own shaping operation as well. And so it's been very helpful as we've set that up, and now have 7 guys working for us on the payroll shaping golf courses. So it's been a great involvement with working with Gil and Jim there at PGA Frisco.
It's I think I played the park earlier in the year, and I nearly thinned and hit the caveman behind the 11th or whatever it is. But in the collaboration you did, how did that go down on the par 3 course? What was the setup you did?
It was kind of interesting. This idea of us collaborating sort of emerged kind of once Omni got involved, and I think both firms said, yeah, that's great, but then nobody really talked about it as like, how would it actually work? And we had actually started PGA Frisco Construction about 6 months for the sort of onset of COVID. And so the short course, the driving range, the practice facilities, all that, because of COVID, got delayed like by a year or so, but we continued on the 2 big golf courses. And so when it finally got time to do the short course, no one had really spoken about how in the world is this collaboration supposed to work. And Jim Wagner, to his credit, said, okay, well, if we're really going to do this, like, we're really going to do this. And so he came up with this idea of like, both firms kind of went and walked the land and talked collectively. We sort of deemed, these would be certain hole locations. And then we sort of split them up 5 and 5. But the real beauty of what Jim came up with is he said, okay, we're going to have Cavemen shape on your 5, and we're going to have Joe Titzer, our shaper, he's going to shape on our 5. So the collaboration is like deep into the DNA that's there. And we ended up having, a lot of fun, the 2 firms designing it together that way. And I think it shows in sort of the, what people experience. It's really a super fun experience there at the swing.
How different was the, not philosophies, but how different's the methodology that Gil took on with your team or his team, and then what you did with his team and your team?
What I remember, the thing I remember the most is one of those early walkthroughs. It was their first walkthrough, and then it's maybe the second walkthrough. The thing has sort of started to be shaped, and I remember we had this sort of big philosophical conversation, and I think the thing that we both sort of agreed on is that it kind of goes back to this ground as your friend, that the ball rolling, like, that's the funnest part of a short course. So whether that's a putt or whether it is a shot that's hitting not on the green and then bounding on, whatever, the ball around moving, like, let's try to maximize those opportunities. And so we even have holes out there that you almost could play with a putter, like from the team ground. And I think it was sort of a result of this of us all saying, like, that's what we want to do. That's really the funnest part of short courses for us. Like, as soon as it becomes just hitting a sand wedge to the middle of a green, like, that's not super fun. But, like, get people thinking, hey, I want to use a putter, or let me like bump a 7-iron, or whatever it is. And so we really tried to create those opportunities there, which tends to be, again, not a huge amount of sand. Though there's certainly some sand out of the swing, but we really wanted to feel like there's optionality about how you can play and something that can be super accessible for juniors learning the game at the North Texas PGA section, but as well as something that really, really accomplished and good players could go enjoy after playing around on the East Course and the West Course.
It sounds like it would have been a lot of fun to be walking. Just
a lot of fun.
Here's a little. You're there's no pressure to design something that's a top 100. There's no pressure to do anything. Let's just go out and get a bit bad with it.
That's right. Yeah, and I hear it's like highly successful. I hear that like it's lit at night, and it's sort of it runs not out of the clubhouse, but rather out of this ice house, this restaurant, bar kind of thing. And but I'll hear there'll be like queues at night, like waiting to go play. So I think it's really met the goals and objectives that I think we all collectively set out to do.
Superb. There's so do you ever see the idea of doing more collaboration work, or is it just
I think we're collaborators by nature, to be honest with you. I mean, when we approach, whether it be an existing club or private developer, we're always into like, what are the goals and objectives, and how can we all work together? And I think sometimes the golf design folks like us get the accolades, but there's normally a whole team of consultants that's behind everything. And I think we find that the best projects are when we truly can sort of have this collaborative approach and team approach to things. And so the idea of having collaboration on the actual golf course design part, I think we're super open to that as well. If it meets a goal or a need for a client, and we have a couple of collaborative efforts ongoing right now, at least in their embryonic stages. So it's fun. We did a project pops to mind that we did in 2014, I guess it was, in Portugal there at Quinta do Lago, and it's owned by. We did it with Paul McKinley, was Ryder Cup captain, and it's owned by Dennis O'Brien, Irishman, and so Paul had already had a pre-existing relationship at Quinta, and he was the Ryder Cup captain. About that, had been named the Ryder Cup captain, I guess, and so we had been engaged to redo the North Course. And then sort of after we'd been engaged, they said, we would really like, Paul's got his own design company as well, and we'd like to get him involved. And I was like, oh, that'd be great. It'd be wonderful. Like, let's do that. And so we collaborated with him on that. And it was great, again, great relationship. And, I didn't know Paul McGinley before this, but I come out of it, now he's a friend of mine. So I think that's kind of the nature of who we are. Like, we're really collaborators at heart.
I noticed, I was looking at I think we have it in the top 10 in Portugal, which is a compliment to a golf course that has been redesigned a few times and no one's ever been happy with what's gone on there. So it must have been a tough property to work with.
It was. I mean, it's got, real estate driven kind of project. And but we were able to really transform the North Course, I think. And we regraded several golf holes. But really created a lot of interest in the greens and the green surrounds. And I think it worked out well that Paul, kind of like us, really likes like fold offs and roll offs and, on greens. And so we have a lot of that there, but it went from sort of being the stepchild of the three golf courses there to, I think really being one that people super enjoyed playing. And so, that's one that we actually have a case study that we show folks sometimes that about the North Course, in that it's a for-profit venture, and so the closure was a big deal, because that was opportunity costs of not being open. So we really tried to minimize the closure. So we started construction in January of 2014, and it reopened in October of 2014. But we did an incredible amount of work. In fact, we had several European-based contractors tell us it wasn't possible, and sometimes Americans can be too American, but we had to be a little bit American here. We're like, oh, wait a minute, can you do 9 holes in that time? They're like, yeah, we can do that. And I said, well, fine, we'll just get two contractors then. And but anyway, we did it in a short amount of time. But then if you look at rounds and rate that happened after it reopened, it really moved the needle in terms of it being successful. And so it was, and it's all in the big, very environmentally protected area as well. So there's a whole sustainability, environmental component to it, as well as we reduce turf and introduce more native species and this kind of thing. So all in all, I think a really successful project. But it took a lot of planning and a lot of thinking through up front of things that were more than just greens, tees, and bunkers. Of like, how do we go and do this and be successful?
It seems like that's where you shine. That's where your company really knows what they're doing.
I think it's where I feel like, I mean, yes, thank you for that. I'll take that as a compliment. But I think it's where my passion is as well. It's like I want great golf. Like, don't get me wrong. I'm still super into greens, tees, and
Oh
bunkers.
yeah, no,
I just, had a wonderful day the last 2 days. I don't ever do this, but I was up at National Golf Links and West Hampton Country Club up in Long Island playing golf. And it's awesome, like incredible, CB McDonald, Seth Rayner golf courses. So I still love greens, tees, and bunkers. Don't get me wrong, but I think at the end of the day, like how this all gets measured up for our clients, it's like they're being successful, whatever that success is, and it doesn't have to be money. It can be money, but it could just be like, hey, I want to build the greatest place in the world, and I don't care what it costs. Like that's a goal and objective as well. So like we're just really into that, and that goes all the way back to my grandfather. This client orientation about what we want to do, and so often, I think that it's more than greens, tees, and bunkers for a client, and I think we're just a golf course designer that has really onboarded, wanting to bring know-how, expertise, to that. And I sort of glossed over it, but that time between my summer jobs with Tom Fazio before going and working for him, I think I said I got involved in finance, but in particular, I was involved as sort of an investment banker. And so the idea of what we're trying to do, how capital works, to make this attempt at goals and objectives, like all that is something that I feel like I have some expertise and experience with, and I think that kind of plays into all this.
yeah, no, absolutely. And it's not like you've got a bad. Your track record's superb. You've got the #1 course in Texas. You've got top tens all over the place. So it's very impressive for how long you've been doing it as in terms of your own company. And yeah, without having come from, this sounds harsh, but it's the idea that everyone believes and trusts in the big three right now, and after 2008, it was very rare to see, there wasn't that many people succeeding outside of those. Everyone wanted a trusted name because it was a really difficult time for golf course architecture.
Sure,
Did you find? Sorry.
Yeah, I think so. I mean, I think what helped us in that period of time when golf started to come back is this thing I'm trying to speak to about kind of looking at complex situations and figuring out how to solve them to meet goals and objectives. And that project I mentioned earlier where we developed the process was Greenwich Country Club in Connecticut, and they really brought us on because we weren't a name at the time, and so like we didn't have baggage that, hey, these guys are going to come in and just try to change the golf course. And I think that behooved us well, but we were seen as smart people that could help figure out and solve problems. And I think that's just I think that's the reputation, I guess is the word, the reputation that we increasingly have as being folks that really approach it really open-minded, trying to solve problems, not just solve problems, but garner opportunities, like to help figure out like what we're doing.
That's a really cool way of viewing it, because most people think of golf course architecture in terms of the Tom Dokes, I want to go in, don't tell me what to do, I'm going to build 18 great holes and then leave. And sometimes that does not quite fit the bill.
Yeah, I mean, I don't really know. I mean, we're so busy. I don't really know what other people do, but I've been known to say to clients, if you're looking for somebody to come in and just tell you what it's all going to be, and you show up later, like I'm probably not your guy. But if you're willing to like roll up the sleeves with me and like let's work together and like let's figure it out together, then I think I probably am your guy. Because again, it's not my money at stake; it's someone else's money, and so like I want to be a good steward of whatever investments are being made, and that's why the success of those investments, whether it be a new development or existing member-owned thing, whatever it is, like I want to feel like we have given it our all and brought our expertise, to that to help go realize whatever the opportunity is.
Well, a great segue to that is the fact that you've been working on something that probably is the most unique thing in golf course architecture right now, which is TGL. Can you explain what's going on there and how the process worked for you?
Sure. So TGL is a new golf league that will debut in January, be broadcast here in the United States on ESPN. And it was owned or produced by Tomorrow Sports, which Mike McCarley, former NBC Golf Channel executive, is the head of. But Tiger Woods and Rory McIlroy are two of many high-profile investors in the venture, and it'll be it's in essence team golf. There's 6 teams made of high-level PGA touring professionals, and they'll play against each other in a round-robin format. But it is going to be in an arena, a purpose-built arena, in front of an audience of 1,500 people or so. But it'll be virtual. So they play like into a screen where they're playing virtually, golf holes that have been designed for the virtual world. But it's not like your normal simulator screen that's like the size of Elvis over my shoulder here. It's massive. It's the size of a 7 or 8 story building is the size of the screen. And so once they get within 30 or 40 yards of the green in the virtual world, then it reverts to play in the arena in real life. And so we have been involved from the very beginning, helping to conceptualize some of this stuff, and so in particular what they call the green zone, which is the in real life. And so it's a green about 3,600 square feet. It's on artificial turf, but we have the ability to modulate the contours, so the contours can change from hole to hole. It's also on a turntable, so it can spin around and have different orientations. And so then all of the virtually designed golf holes ultimately marry up to this green zone green in whatever orientation the designer wants. And so we've designed some of the virtual golf holes. Augie Pisa has designed some of the virtual golf holes. The Nicklaus organization has designed some of the golf holes. And so you'll see all of this starting to be broadcast in January of next year. And the 6 teams play a round robin, and then also there's a playoff format, and then ultimately someone is crowned the champion. And there are all kinds of unique sort of gameplay versions of the gameplay, in that it's sort of it's 3 people per team. It's match play between them, but there are various rules where what they call the hammer can be thrown, and it sort of doubles the point value of the hole. And there's certain dynamics to all that. And there's going to be a shot clock, so it's going to be fast paced. And
Good.
I think it's just a whole new version of golf in essence. And it'll be very interesting to see where this goes, because I can see it going in kind of lots of different ways. But this isn't like me and you playing screen golf. This is like some of the world's best players in the world, going after in this new version of golf. So it should be very, very exciting.
It's such a cool concept. It really is.
It really is. And I mean, there are multiple times along the way, I'm like, how in the world is this really going to work? Is this going to work? Is this going to work? But Tomorrow Sports assembled an incredible team of TV people, engineers, videographers, game people, like all this incredible team of people. And, Full Swing Golf's been the one that's helped with the green and with the design, the playing part of all the virtual part. And it really, I'm so super excited about it. I was just down in the Performance Lab studio a couple of weeks ago, and as we're getting closer and closer to debuting in January, it's just becoming more and more real to see people have come through and the test play that's happened. It's really going to be a unique thing. And, in some ways it's also geared towards, the game too, of like presenting the game, to ever increasing demographic that hereto now maybe not interested in golf, but I think the pace of play and these quicker formats and the format itself, in fact it's on television, in fact it has a virtual component to it. I really see it as something that'll be engaging to a younger and younger audience as well. So I'm really just excited to see where this all goes, because it certainly feels very innovative.
It's such a cool project to be involved in. But when you got told, right, okay, we're going to play golf indoors, and this is how do we conceptualize this? Were you just sitting there going, where do I start?
No, because many years ago we had started to conceptualize something very, very different. But this idea of like, could we deconstruct golf in a way that we could put it indoors, like with the idea of like how do you take golf to Midtown Manhattan? Like how do you do that? Like you can't have space to do that. So like, is there a way to break that down? And obviously simulator is a part of that, but like simulators are great to like whale away to a driver, but like when you get up, like you can't really putt on a simulator, and like how does all that work? So like some of this we had already spent a fair amount of brain effort trying to think through. But when these guys started talking about what they wanted to do, and it's like, holy smokes, this is serious investment. This is serious players involved. It was like, oh, how do we do this and put this on television that'll be, a viable product? And again, we explored so many different avenues once the team got, assembled, and many tests and trials, and oh my God, back to the drawing board, this kind of thing. And like I said, I think there were many times along the way I'm like, this is not going to work. This isn't going to work. But then there'd be some spark. Like, well, wait a minute. Like that is an interesting idea. Like maybe that works. And so you have these sort of fits and starts, and it's just like the problems seem like they're all sort of shedding away now that we're toward the end. And again, I keep saying the same word, but I'm super excited to see this actually happen, and it's coming. So it's going to be great.
One question: what was the concept that you just couldn't work, but was the most interesting or cool thing that you just couldn't get to work?
So the technology of modulating the green, like that kind of already existed. And, but then, we as golf course designers, like we want variety. So if we're just knowing we're going to design these virtual golf holes, if everything hit into the exact same green, like even changing the contours, it's still sort of the same green. And so I think the big idea that for us was really this idea of putting it on a turntable so that we could then change the orientation of the green. But that was very, very complex, because these things that, change the surface of the green, like they're meant to be fixed. So now if they're also spinning around, it's like, how do you even do all of that? And so that's where we kind of got, super excited about the concept. This is why it's easy to be a concept designer, because you don't have to work out all this detail, like how this actually works.
Engineers.
But this is where the team of the engineers, like they after starting off like there's no way this can be done, like then it was like, well, maybe we could do this. And then it was like, that's this kind of thing I'm trying to describe. And I think that's what became sort of really, really cool to be a part of this team, as to watch this whole what seemed like an infinitely complex problem start to get solved. And there was lots of detail of how do you hit a ball that's going to land and react like a real ball, and how do you build the layers of construction underneath the surface of the artificial grass such that this all works and feels like real golf. So that was all, again, having a seat at the table was just sort of fun to kind of watch all this problem solving happen.
Is the golf ball got a chip, or is it a standardized golf ball that's...
And it's a good question. I think it's just a standardized golf ball, but there's all this monitoring of all the dynamics of it all. And I think one of the fun things will be, in terms of how they produce it as a television product will be interesting, because you'll have all these camera views and stuff that wouldn't be available in the real world. And so I think that's going to be really interesting to sort of see that. Like for instance, you could have a camera on the golf ball itself as it descends down toward the hole, which you wouldn't have in the real world.
Yeah, and even just having a view from over the top of the putt and watching the movement, or just random things like that would... Yeah. So in terms of the design element of that, okay, sorry. In terms of the design element, I don't know how to word this. There's real world boundaries to design in golf course, designing a golf course and architecture of a golf course. Now, for this golf simulation, you kind of shed a few of those things away, or do you still have them because the green's in situ, or how was it? How wild can you go, or what do you do when you're sitting there going, I'm going to design a golf ball that's completely mental that you can only do in space? Or
so I think when we first approached it, and we kind of came at it a little bit differently than the other designers because we had been involved from the beginning with the design of the green and the green zone. And I think what we had always conceptualized is that the golf holes, the virtual holes, should look like real golf holes. And so some of our first efforts, like we're trying to take golf into a landscape that existed that maybe you'd never have the opportunity to do. So like, through Central Park or around the Boston Harbor or what have you. I think some of the other golf designers really approached it of, well, let's go do whatever we want, like this almost fantastical, fantasy type landscapes. And I think it took us a little while to realize, well, wait a minute, that, we're really not, why are we trying to put ourselves back into the constraint laden world? Like, why don't we go do things more, that we can do kind of whatever. And so we sort of evolved. Our early efforts were sort of tamer than some of the product that you'll ultimately see. I did a podcast with TGL a couple of weeks ago, and they showed off one of the holes that we've done, which is par 5 playing like around the rim of a canyon, but you can play out into this little plinth, this plateau that sticks up in the middle of the canyon. And if you do that, you land on this patch of grass that's surrounded by cliffs everywhere. Like, then you can go for the green and 2, where if you play a safer way around, then you can't. And so, like, that's the kind of thing, like, would never happen in the real world. Like, how do you even get maintenance equipment to this little thing that's hovering, but like not in the virtual world, you have to worry about that stuff. And so I think for us, at some point, we sort of leaned into the let's operate in the no constraint world.
There's did you find it must have been quite fun, because I guess if it's mainly match play, everything's a risk reward. You can really go for it in terms of design.
Yeah, I think, and the holes that we did kind of lean into that. So we ended up doing a lot of, sort of heroic par 5s, half par 5s, with the sort of go, no go decision. But then we also did a fair number of par 3s. And I think this is where our knowledge of the green zone really helped, in that we kind of knew how we could orient the green and do the contours such, like, we're really trying to, on the par 3 holes that we've done, of trying to get the player to really think about like shot shape in terms of trying to have the ball hit and react and stay close. So everything we did was trying to, put question in the player's mind, or decision rather, I should say. And then I think what you layer in the shot clock, like, it's going to be, I think it'd be interesting dynamic to see.
The last question on this: will we ever see an 18 holes of the best holes in the world in the tournament? So,
I don't know.
eclectic.
I think there's, like, the possibilities of where this can all go are almost endless. So, Tomorrow Sports is a bunch of great creative guys, and it'll be, I think, like, I'm excited about January, guys starting to play, but I'm also further excited to see, like, what's next after season 1.
I think I've asked everything I need to ask, apart from one last question.
Sure.
Actually, I've got a couple if you've got time.
Yep.
The first question is, I always ask everyone at the end of the interviews, is top 5 golf courses, but favorite golf courses, not the best, the ones that you're just inspire you, your favorites, or mean the most to you.
Yep. Oh, that's a hard question.
I've had people say 3. I've had people say 13. So
I think I almost end up answering the question, like, through, like, influence on me. So I was very fortunate to have family friends that were Cypress Point members growing up. And so to get to go play the sort of cathedral of golf, it was just all inspiring to me. Like, I just couldn't believe that something was so magical, and were allowed to have golf clubs in your hands. And then being a son of the South, Augusta National is sort of mecca for all things, golf in the South, and family being longtime patrons of the Masters, ultimately have family friends that are Augusta National members. And so I got to play both Cypress Point and Augusta National as a young person. And I think that was when I first discovered that, the fact that I learned that Alistair McKenzie had designed both of these 2 places, which were the greatest places I'd ever set foot on with the golf club. That led me to go finding every book I could on Dr. McKenzie, to learn about golf course design. And it's not that I wanted to be a golf course designer. I was just fascinated in it and fascinated in him. And for, this was long before Amazon and stuff. So it's not easy to track down books on Alistair McKenzie at that day and age, but I did. So those two would be on the list for sure. I mentioned that I did, live for a while in Ireland. I went to Trinity College in Dublin for a while. And so got to play lots of golf around there. And I mean, I could answer 5 different places in Ireland alone, but Lahinch was always a really special place. And that one of my teammates at Trinity College, his family had a home in the village. And so we'd go down there and play golf a lot, which would be great greens, tees, and bunkers, but like greats, having a bunch of crack and pints of Guinness and all this kind of stuff. So like really super, super great memories there. I think that my parents now live at a place that Tom Fazio did called Wade Hampton Golf Club, and just got so many great memories of being with my dad there. It's hard for me not to put that on the list. It's like one of these golf courses that I'll really only play with my father. So I think there's something super special about that. And, so that's 4. And then, oh man, what would I say? I might say a golf. I normally don't include golf courses that we've been involved in, but I'm going to say the Pelican Golf Club outside of Tampa, Florida. So the Doyle family hired us to do that golf course. Kind of really, it's one of our first, Beau Welling designed golf courses, and I think having that opportunity will always be something I very much treasure and really appreciate the Doyles having faith in us to let us go build this wonderful, great place, which has a big LPG event there where the Anika's now played, and it's where the match was last year under the lights with Tiger and Rory and that kind of stuff. So that's what's hitting my mind today, at least. So ask me in a couple of weeks and I might give you a different 5, but for today, I'm going to go with those.
No, I think that's it's very appropriate to because that's a place that means something to you.
Yeah,
that's what I want. That's my favorite. Yeah. The other question, one last one. Sorry, I've just on that is, last day. Where would you spend your last day in golf?
Ooh, well, that's a hard one. Last day.
I know a lot of people would say something like National or a full day at Augusta. Or
Sure. My last day of golf.
Even at your home club.
It would either be my home club, or I think it would be, I mean, I might say go to St. Andrews and, go back to where it started. And I think it would be links golf somewhere. And it'd be a huge debate as to where. We happen to have a project under construction right now in Scotland, a place called Taymouth Castle, up in Kenmore. And, yeah. And so, I've been spending a fair amount of time over the last couple of years in St. Andrews as well. And I think there's something about being there, and it's not even that I've played maybe once or twice, but I've just been there a bunch, and just watching all these people come from all over the world to play, or even just come look. Like there's something that's pretty magical about that. Like if you're really into golf, which I am, and that's the home of golf, I think that's probably the answer to your question. I think I'd want to go back to the home of golf.
Well, thank you very much, Beau.
Yep.
I very much enjoyed that. A lot of interesting discussion and just different views and different debates. It's brilliant. I really enjoyed that.
Well, I've enjoyed the conversation as well. No, thank you.
Thank you, Beau, for giving us a wealth of knowledge. You're fascinating. Honestly, one of the most interesting conversations I've had this year. And I wish you the best with all your new projects. If you want to get in touch, my name's James, and it's James at top100golfcourses.com or official Top 100 on Instagram. Please remember, play fast, lunch slow.